Kia ora, I'm Nadine Higgins and welcome to your personal finance podcast, The Prosperity Project. I am on a mission to empower you financially. And while I work in finance, I'm a columnist, a journalist, an investor, a financial advisor, and a mum of two, I do not claim to be the font of all knowledge. So each week, I'll be bringing in the experts from across the world of finance and beyond to find out all the things you and I need to know. And if you want to get your questions in front of those experts, please email them to me, nadine.higgins at nzherald.co.nz. Today, the Māori Millionaire is a young wahine on a mission to change not just her own money mindset and financial trajectory, but that of her people. Te Kahukura Boynton is a podcaster and entrepreneur and now the author of Māori Millionaire, a beginner's guide to building better money habits. Oh, and she is only 21. She describes herself as being on a lifelong journey toward becoming her best self, which I love. Te Kahukura, kia ora, and welcome to the Prosperity Project.
Kia ora, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our kōrero today.
So am I, because you are fascinating. I wish I was half as switched on as you are, well, right now, let alone at the age of 21. But let's just take a couple of steps backwards to the beginnings of the Māori Millionaire. You know, you're 18 years old, you're at university, you got no money, but that's the lot of most uni students. So what was it that made you think, I need to get smarter about this, I'm going to do things differently?
At rock bottom, you know, when I was in my dorm room and I was crying about rent and wondering if I would be able to do this, I had delays with my student allowance getting processed, delays finding a job, which I was really surprised by because I had so much work experience. I sat in my dorm room and I realized that not only for me, but for people, Māori in my community, for Pacific Islanders, but even just people in general, this is a problem so many people navigate. And I realized that when I looked at people who were far older than me, many of the patterns that I was experiencing, they too were experiencing. And I realized that my life would continue to play out in this way unless I was able to find a way to do it differently. And I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad actually as a young person. So I was only 8 when I read the book. So I had, you know, an understanding of money and how this all worked, yet I was still struggling. And so I realized that when I went online to look at creators who were creating information about this, nobody really spoke to me. I looked at them and I thought, well, you know, you've already achieved your goals. You're already so far ahead of me. And I realized that there was no one who was speaking to the version who I was at that stage, just a complete beginner wanting to improve my life. But no one was really able to meet me where I was at in terms of the content. And so I thought, why not be the change I wanted to see?
But how do you even start when you're at rock bottom, as you described it? So many people get stuck in that cycle because you need to take on short-term debt to plug that gap because the student allowance hasn't come through or whatever. So how do you even start?
Such a good question. So one of the things I realized was that I had an income problem. I wasn't generating any money. And so I literally applied for every single job that I could find at that point online. There would have been like hundreds of applications. It was crazy. And one of the key things at that part was when I was constantly being faced with rejection after rejection after rejection was my mindset. I had to keep going. I had to realize that, you know, when I looked online for people that had achieved their big goals, there were parts of their journey that really resonated, and it was those starting stages where they were faced with failure after failure after failure or rejection, but they kept on going. And I realized that that's what I had to do. So every time I tried something and it didn't work, I was like, this is literally just making me stronger. And I think social media has such a bad rap in so many people's lives, and I totally understand it. But for me, social media really provided me with this different mindset, something that I wasn't able to see in my real life. And so, you know, I was consuming TikToks that were saying things like, well, you ask the universe to be stronger, and so the universe is sending you challenges. And then you're like, what are these challenges doing? And so these little things really just pushed me and allowed me to keep on going when I had no evidence that what I was working towards would even be possible. Or when I was faced with rejection or when I didn't get what I wanted. And so that was the key thing, was actually getting my student allowance, and then eventually getting a job.
You've obviously got such tenacity, but also you're willing to put a big goal out there, to be a millionaire by 25.
Yes.
Did you just decide you needed something audacious to work towards, or how did that come about?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I looked online and I couldn't see anyone doing I couldn't relate to anyone. I thought, what would be relatable? Everyone's got a big goal. Everybody, dreams about winning lotto one day or becoming a millionaire and all of these different things. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool to just share my journey of becoming a Māori millionaire? Because I'm not a millionaire and I can't see, I couldn't see any Māori doing what I was wanting to create, but also I wasn't actually, I hadn't actually hit my goal. So I needed it to be very clear that I was going to share my journey. And right at the beginning, it was how do I create a money plan? How do I actually automate processes in my life, like putting an AP on for my KiwiSaver or whatever those things were. So, yeah.
So you've just gone on a huge journey of educating yourself just a little bit better every single day.
100%. And actually, one of the points in my rock bottom was I've got endometriosis and I was struggling with a drug addiction and I was 183 kgs at my highest. And when I went and met with the surgeon and he said that my BMI was too high to get surgery for endometriosis, I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because at that point, weight loss for me just felt completely impossible. It was something I had tried so many times before. And at that point, I read Atomic Habits, which taught me the power of just being 1% better every day. So
I love that book. I hear you.
I love it so much. That book literally saved my life. When I looked at everything that I needed to do in my life to improve, to get to where I wanted to go, it just overwhelmed me and it just felt like all of this weight was on my shoulders. And this book really just showed me that I didn't have to worry about 100 million things to do. I just needed to focus on one small thing at a time. And at the beginning, it was literally a 5-minute walk down to the end of my road and back. And I got so puffed out doing that. And I was so exhausted literally after a 5-minute walk. But what I was doing was I was building evidence that I could do hard things, that I could do something that was outside of my comfort zone, where prior to this I had no evidence I could do that because I would set really, really big goals and I wouldn't actually be able to stick to small things in order to achieve that.
And you have got there, right? I read you've lost 70 kilos, is that right?
Yeah, 75 kgs.
Wow. I mean, that's a massive achievement. Are there some parallels there between the financial goals and setting the right behaviours and habits and all of those things with fitness and diet and exercise?
100%. So one of the things I think about when it comes to money is respecting your money. It doesn't matter if it's only $1, you've got to learn to respect it. And when you respect your money, it will start respecting you. And so at the start of my journey, I was at the dairy every single day buying E2s, buying chocolate milk, a bag of chips and all these things. And I realized that these were little investments that were not helping me get to where I wanted to go. And so I had to stop doing those things. And in doing that, it meant that I was being more mindful about the money that I was spending and going literally, a $2 E2 isn't going to help me do anything, but say a $2 broccoli, which back in the day I was like, oh, that's expensive. It's actually, this is an investment in me. This is going to help me. So really changing my mindset about where I was putting my money to use impacted this. Obviously, there's a lot of diet and exercise and all of that involved, but the money piece is so huge and I wouldn't have been able to do it if I didn't change my mindset about where I was spending my money. I used to think that a gym membership was a waste of money. I was like, why would anyone pay to go and run on a treadmill when you can just go outside? Whereas now I'm like, oh my gosh, I will do this. I will pay for this because it's going to help me become that millionaire version of me.
We're going to talk a little bit more about mindset and the power of it a little bit later, but I want to talk about the business because you are the business, right? You're the Māori millionaire in the making. How do you now derive your income? Because I know that you're a subscriber to the philosophy of a millionaire has 7 streams of income. So how many are you building?
Yeah, such a good question. So I've done a few different things. I've launched an online program, and this program has been a huge source of income for the business. And that actually started because I was traveling around the country delivering workshops, speaking, and I realized that I'm only able to help the amount of people that are in this room. But if I want to actually scale the impact that I'm able to create, I need to digitize this, and I need to make it accessible for more people to reach. So that was a huge game changer in terms of my business. But alongside that, I still do the public speaking workshops, my book, of course, which is just getting started. What else do I do? I've done some coaching.
And social media, is that monetized for you? Because you've got a big following now.
Yeah. So I monetize social media through my program. That's how I'm able to generate money there. I don't really do many brand partnerships anymore, but I am looking for a podcast sponsor if anyone's listening. Would love to support the Māori
Shout
Millionaire
out.
podcast.
Get in behind Te Kahukura because she is on the up. I'm sure you get asked this question a lot, but just before we talk a little bit more about the book, how is progress going toward that big millionaire by 25 goal?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really focusing on at the moment is growing my income, because what I realized was that Māori disproportionately have lower incomes, and we can look at investing in assets for the long term, which I still really believe in, but I think that it's far more beneficial to look at increasing our income. So for me at the moment, that means reinvesting a lot of the money that I am making back into my business so that I can increase that. I've got an ambitious goal of building a 7-figure company, and that will help me, of course, to become a millionaire.
Do you feel pressure having stated it so publicly, or is it a fantastic kind of bit of accountability and motivation that you've said it out loud to the world?
Yeah, I think there have been parts in my journey where I'm I'm not sure if I'll actually get there. And part of me is just it's actually just a fun game to me. It's I'm sharing a thing, and if I don't hit it at 25, it's not the end of the world. And I've actually I was reading an article when I was 18, and I was looking at it, I was like, wow, you're so ambitious. And I actually forgot for a long time that I had said that. But I think that it's a really cool thing to set an ambitious goal and to have other people know about this goal. It can be scary at times, what if I don't do it? But I don't even believe in failure. I think that if you give things a go, you stick at it, eventually you'll achieve your goal. If it's not at the right, the set timeline that you initially thought you would, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're working hard, you're consistently learning. And I think now my position has kind of changed with that timeline. It doesn't have to be 25. I am doing the mahi and I'm working on that. And whenever it's supposed to happen, I believe it will. Look,
whether you get 25, 50, 75% of the way there, you're still a heck of a lot further ahead than most people at the age of 25 when it's probably negative 50,000 at that point. So let's talk about the book, because this is a big deal. You're a published author at 21. How did it come about? What makes you want to write a book?
Growing up, as I said, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was so inspired. I thought, this is absolutely incredible. And on my journey, I've read so many personal finance books, investing books, and one of the things that was missing from all of them was an author who I really resonated with. And it wasn't actually long after I launched Māori Millionaire that I got an email from Penguin asking if I wanted to write a book. And I was like, I have always wanted to write a book.
Wow.
And so I continued on this journey, getting the ball rolling of writing my book. And what I didn't realize was actually how much mahi would be involved in creating this. And now we're a few years on, and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I've done this. But no, I think it's really awesome to have this resource for not only Māori, but for whānau who just don't resonate with books that are just too complicated. And there's one promise I can guarantee with my book, and that is that you will not need a dictionary to read this book. And I can't say the same for a lot of personal finance books. So yeah, I'm really proud of being able to create this resource for people.
And you absolutely should be. And there's a lot in there on mindset. And I can see that you've done an amazing job of building a really resilient growth mindset yourself. So we'll talk about that more in just a moment, but we just have to take a quick break. We'll be back with Te Kahukura Boynton right after this. welcome back to the Prosperity Project. We're talking to Kahukura Boynton, who is a newly minted author with the Māori Millionaire, but she is also a 21-year-old on a mission. And it's not just about making herself a millionaire, it's about educating her people, educating a generation. And I guess to Kahukura, money is not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It is not just about knowing the stuff, it's about doing the stuff. And people kind of dismiss the mindset element and the role it plays in finances. Why do you think it's so important?
I think it's really important because most people know what they need to do. Most people know that they should have a budget. Most people know that they should be putting money aside, but there's a reason why people aren't doing it. And there are so many different reasons why. I think that people might fear failure. So they're scared that if they set a goal and they work towards achieving it and then they don't achieve it, they'll be like, well, I've put so much work in and I've tried so hard and I've told people and I didn't do it. And then they'll be like, well, what are people going to think about me? I think that's a big one, fear of failure. But I think there's also a lot of people who experience a fear of success. And I know this one is really confusing because people are like, why would you ever be scared of success? But if you become so good at managing your money that you don't need to ask other people for help, or you actually set yourself up to a point where you're so independent, that means that you might not be able to ask for help. So as an example, if you're a young person and you're always asking your parents for loans, you're always asking family for money, and then you actually build some savings and you set yourself up and they know that you've got money there, then you can't ask them for help anymore because they're like, well, we know that you're good. And so some people might fear that. They fear that if I actually become independent, people are going to know that. And that means that I might not be able to ask people for help as much as I was before.
Takes away the safety net. Are you talking about yourself? Yeah.
That's something I actually talk about in my book. I started off my journey at uni because I didn't have any money. And so I actually had to ask my family for money to be able to pay my rent. And I've always been super, super independent. Like literally ask my mum. I was making my own school lunches at like 5, like ridiculous stuff, super independent. And I hate asking people for help. I hate it. And that was part of my journey was, one, at the beginning, realizing that it is okay to ask for help. But two, we do want to be independent and we do want to be able to set ourselves up so that we can actually help other people, because I think the more that I set myself up, the more that I'm going to be able to help other people.
On that note, though, I heard a podcast episode that you did about financial boundaries, and I thought it was so interesting because obviously once you set yourself up, other people see you as someone to come to for a loan or for help. And I know that, you have a belief in helping and lifting others up. But how do you set the boundary if they're constantly being like, and this week I need more, and this week, by the way, can you spot me for this?
Such a good question. So one of the things that I had to do, because I get a lot of people asking me for loans and for tics and things like that, was just making a boundary of what you're available for and what you're not available for. And this can be really hard, especially with cultural pressures, or if you know someone is actually financially struggling. One of the things I realized, though, with one person in particular in my life who consistently asked for money, was that every time I said yes to this person, I was teaching them that they didn't need to sort their own finances out, because I would always be there helping them if they needed the money. And so I had to have this mindset shift to go, when I say no, I'm actually calling them forward to be able to do something. And I didn't just say no. It was actually like, no, I'm not going to give you money, but yes, I'm actually going to help you. Like, can I help you to create a money plan? Can I help you? Like, can I teach you how to do this so that you don't need to? And part of that too, I think some people aren't ready to create change in their life. And I really had to learn to accept that. Not everyone is ready. And when they are, if you're available, you can support them. But
I suppose if you come to the rescue every time, then you're delaying the point at which they might decide to learn for themselves to do it differently. But a really hard call to make.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think about the beginning of my journey. I wouldn't have done what I have done if it weren't for actually not having any money.
Yeah, totally. It creates a need. You can't ignore it.
There's two things you can do in that stage. You can actually, change how you're living your life. You can take responsibility for the habits that you have that aren't helping you move forward, or you can stay in that state. And people will take one of two options.
I want to ask about manifestation, because you do write a little bit about that in the book. And to some people, it's a bit woo-woo, or maybe it's just a mood board of like holidays I want to have, or how I want to look after I've gone to the gym for a week and eaten salad. How do you implement it, and does it work?
Yes, I absolutely love manifesting. And I too actually had this belief. I was like, that is just ridiculous. Like, how does just thinking about something work? And I think the key thing that people misunderstand about manifesting is you can't just literally create a vision board or just daydream about your goal and expect it to happen. You actually have to put the work in. One of the things that I used to do when I was working a job and I was like, well, I want to leave my job and I want to become self-employed, was I would start every single day visualizing this. And so when I was driving to work, I would pretend in my head that I was driving to a cafe to go and work on my own business. What this did was it put me in this energetic frequency where I was like, that's already what's happening. That's already what is in line with my future. Now what I have to do is actually put the work in to make that happen. So they'll daydream about it, or they'll visualize it, they'll create the vision board, but they won't do the action piece. The action piece is what actually makes it happen. So when I did that, it neutralized it for me. So it made it feel closer than just like a far-fetched dream. And that meant that I was more likely to actually put the mahi in to do it, those small little steps that I was taking every day. So one of the things that I did at the beginning was I made a commitment to posting on social media every single day. I knew that if I did this and I showed up consistently, and I showed up so many times it would just be unrealistic to not see success, eventually it would happen. And so on the days where like I just couldn't be bothered, I was tired, I was going through normal, I was a teenager, normal teenage things, doing this exercise encouraged me to take those steps, even though I had no evidence that it was actually going to be possible.
What about the power of words? Because you do some interesting things. You talk about, rather than living expenses, living investments. And instead of an emergency fund, you talk about a success fund. And I really love the way that shifts the way you look at things. Is that the intention, that if you look at it as a success fund rather than a oh shit fund, that maybe that's more what it's about?
Yeah, definitely. When I heard budgeting, I was like, that is so budget. That reminds me of like budget bread that Pack and Save growing up, and like their Cocoa Pops don't even taste like real Cocoa Pops. And I was like, I don't want to think about this when I'm creating a plan that's helping me to be better with my finances. When I look at spending money or circulating money, it's like every time I put money out into the world, there's got to be some type of gain from this. Like even gas, if you think about gas, which is something that I used to hate. I was like, I hate spending money on gas. It's so expensive, and like it is. But I was like, I have a choice to do this. I don't have to buy gas. I'm not going to die if I don't buy gas, but I'm choosing to put my money into this so that I don't have to walk places. I'm like, well, that's an investment in my time. That means I get to save money instead of it taking, an hour or 10 hours to walk somewhere. It can take, 10 minutes in the car or whatever it is.
So it's about reframing.
Yeah, it's
I get to rather than I have to. What about the scarcity mindset? Because you talk a bit about that as well. And I think sometimes we might get stuck in that without even realising. If you're stuck thinking about that I can't afford and I can't, how do you get to the point where you think that you can?
It all starts with what you believe to be true. Whatever you believe about something, you're always going to find evidence for this. So if you say, I can't afford it, and you believe you can't afford something, you're going to find all of this evidence that you can't do it. Like you've got all of these bills coming and you've got all of this stuff to pay for, right? But if you change your mindset to something that's like, how can I afford it? And I can afford it. You're going to find evidence for this to be true. So when I worked a job and I wanted to leave and I wanted to work for myself, I was like, well, I can't afford this. Like, how am I supposed to do this? But I changed my mindset to, I can afford this and I'm just going to figure out how. And when I went down that pathway, I was like, wow, people want me to speak at events. People want to do partnerships with me. I could do this. I could do that. And I started being creative with all of these different ideas of how I could generate more money. I can't afford it as a statement. It doesn't create solutions, but asking yourself the question, how can I? You're going to come up with all of these answers. Like we're so creative as humans, but we get stuck in this pattern of just saying something we don't even want to be true. And I think it's really important to build awareness around the things that we're telling ourselves every single day.
Absolutely. You're doing a lot of mahi that helps improve financial literacy. And I was fascinated to see that one of your most viral videos was actually about the difference between an EFTPOS card, a debit card, and a credit card. I mean, what are we to read into that? Is that an indication that the level at which the financial services industry is talking to people is just not at all appropriate for the stuff they're actually needing to figure out?
I think that there's a benefit to all of the different people in this industry, but I think that what I do differently is I meet people right at that beginning stage where it's like, people don't even know that. And it was just a fun little idea I had. I was like, I wonder how many people don't know the difference between these cards. And I was amazed by how many people were actually interested in that post. But I think it's really important we have someone speaking about these things that aren't talked about enough, the really simple stuff.
In the blurb of your book, it says it's about buying land back, not Gucci bags. So for you, is the purpose, the kaupapa, does it just run really deep? Is that where this energy and this drive for someone who's still only 21 and has already achieved all of these things, is that where it comes from?
I look around in my community and I see so many people really struggling, and something that so many people say to me, they say, Māori aren't the only people who are struggling, and I totally agree. So many people are struggling, but what we see is that Māori and Pacifica are disproportionately struggling, and what I want to be is a light for my people, to show us that change is possible, that we can change things. That something I speak about in my book is that people say that the system is failing. People say that it's not working, but I believe that it's succeeding at what it was designed to do. And my mission is to share an alternative pathway and to share the resources and the tips and the strategies that I'm using to change my life from, once really struggling with so many different elements of my life, to being able to slowly start building something better and hopefully one day leave generational wealth.
You're an absolute light for everyone starting out on their financial journey. It's wonderful to talk to you, and I so look forward to watching you progress, whether that's to be a millionaire at 24, 28, 32. You're doing wonderful things along the way. So thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to The Prosperity Project. You can follow this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and please do chuck us a rating or a review while you're there. For more personal finance and business content, head to nzherald.co.nz, and please do feel free to get in touch with your questions and your stories, nadine.higgins at nzme.co.nz. A reminder, though, that this podcast is informational only, and nothing we say here should be considered personalised financial advice. But also remember that while listening to this podcast is hopefully going to be additive to your financial knowledge, and that is fantastic, knowing stuff doesn't create change. Doing stuff does. So what action are you going to take today to make your life more prosperous? My producer for this episode is Ethan Sills. Sound engineer is Richard Martin. I'm Nadine Higgins. Thanks for listening to The Prosperity Project.